He was a man made of ice and shadows, the richest and most feared man in New York, and he had not spoken a word of English in a decade. They called Nikolai Volkov the Silent Tundra, a ghost who moved markets and destroyed empires with a single, cold glance. His own executives were terrified of him. The world saw a brute, a myth, a monster. They were all wrong. They had no idea that the most powerful man in the city was a prisoner, until the one person who could understand him wasn't a CEO or a rival, but the waitress clearing his table. She was about to translate his silence, and in doing so, expose a conspiracy that would burn them all. The air at Le Ciel was not just air. It was a finely curated, temperature-controlled, $3 million blend of rarefied oxygen and the ghost of Dom Perignon, costing $25,000 a square foot. It was air that you paid to breathe, and at table 7, the man at the head of the table wasn't breathing it. He was owning it. This was Nikolai Volkov. Chloe Larson, balancing a tray of $400 sparkling waters, knew the legends. Everyone did. The papers called him the Silent Tundra, a Russian oligarch, a tech mogul, a global force, a man who had reportedly bought the New York Stock Exchange just to prove he could, before selling it back an hour later at a profit. He was always seen with his executive team, but he never, ever spoke. His right-hand man, a sleek reptilian man named Bennett Pierce, did all the talking. His security, led by a man named Garrett Shaw, who looked like a shaved block of granite, did all the staring. Nikolai Volkov simply existed. Tonight, he was existing at Chloe's station. It was her third double shift this week. Her feet throbbed in her regulation black and cheap shoes. Her mind, however, was miles away, translating 17th century Slavic verbs. Chloe wasn't supposed to be a waitress. She was supposed to be Dr. Larson, a PhD in Slavic linguistics. But then her father's lungs had given out, and the hospital bills had appeared, and the academic world didn't pay for emergencies. So now she served water to men who could buy the ocean. Mr. Volkov is pleased with the initial framework, Bennett Pierce was saying, his voice a smooth, buttery lie. He was speaking to Arthur Conrad, the CEO of a rival tech firm. Chloe watched as she refilled water glasses, a task she had perfected to the point of invisibility. This was the skill of a waitress, to become moving wallpaper, a pair of hands without a face. And when you are invisible, you see things. She saw that Bennett Pierce was sweating, just slightly, at his immaculate hairline. She saw that Arthur Conrad was trying to look relaxed, but was gripping his fork so hard his knuckles were white. And she saw Nikolai Volkov. He was leaning back in his chair, his custom-tailored suit impossibly perfect. His face was a mask of cold neutrality. He wasn't looking at Bennett or Arthur. He was staring at a single drop of condensation rolling down his water glass. He traced its path with his eyes, his focus so intense it was terrifying. Then he tapped his fork. Once. A tiny tink against the china. Bennett Pierce flinched. "That is to say," Bennett stammered, "Mr. Volkov feels the projections are optimistic, perhaps. He prefers a more grounded approach." Arthur Conrad forced a laugh. Of course. We at Conrad Industries are all about grounded approaches." He was lying. Chloe had read about him. He was a corporate raider known for hostile takeovers. The tension was so thick, Chloe felt she could barely move her tray. She backed away from the table, her heart pounding. The power radiating from Volkov was suffocating. It wasn't just wealth, it was an absolute, crushing presence. He was a black hole in a bespoke suit. She was heading to the kitchen when the disaster happened. Arthur Conrad, in a gesture of false camaraderie, had stood up to propose a toast. As he did, he accidentally knocked over a full glass of 5,000 a bottle red wine. But it didn't just spill on the carpet. It flew across the table, drenching a stack of sensitive-looking documents, contracts by the look of them. The table erupted. "Oh, heavens, how clumsy!" Conrad bellowed, dabbing at the mess with a napkin, only making it worse. "Sir, those are the—" Bennett Pierce looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. The maitre d', Pierre, who had been watching from afar, snapped his fingers at Chloe. "You! The table! Clean it! Now!" Chloe's blood ran cold. She grabbed a stack of fresh linen napkins and hurried over. She was suddenly the center of attention, the invisible girl made visible, and for the worst possible reason. "I am so sorry, Mr. Volkov," Arthur Conrad said, looking directly at the Russian. "A terrible accident." Chloe, on her hands and knees, dabbing at the soaked, bleeding ink pages, knew it wasn't an accident. The angle was wrong. Conrad had swept his arm back and then forward. It was deliberate. She was just trying to minimize the damage, to get away when she heard it. It wasn't a shout. It was barely a breath, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated with so much fury, so much contempt, that it made the hair on Chloe's arm stand on end. Underneath the feigned apologies of Conrad and the frantic whispers of Bennett, Nikolai Volkov had leaned forward and muttered, in perfect, dark, beautiful Russian, "Staya supov, zhazdushchaya krovi." Chloe froze. Her hand, holding a ruined document, stopped moving. She knew that phrase. A flock of vultures thirsting for blood. It wasn't just a curse. It was a line from a pre-Soviet poem about betrayal. Her mind, the PhD part of her brain that she thought was dormant, took over. The exhaustion, the fear, the pain in her feet, it all vanished, replaced by the pure, academic thrill of language. Without thinking, without even looking up from the floor, she responded. She whispered back, her own Russian fluent, if a little rusty. "Oni golodny. No oni boyatsya onya." They are hungry, but they fear the fire. The sound of Bennett Pierce's voice cut off as if he'd been strangled. Arthur Conrad's fake apologies died in his throat. Even the clinking of silverware from other tables seemed to fade. The tink of Nikolai Volkov's fork, setting it down on the plate, sounded like a gunshot in the sudden, absolute silence. Slowly, Chloe looked up. The silent Tundra was silent no more. His eyes, the color of a winter storm over the Baltic Sea, were locked onto hers. He was not looking at the stain. He was not looking at his rival. He was looking at the waitress on the floor, and then he spoke. Not a whisper, but a full, resonant, commanding baritone. In Russian. "Who," he demanded, "in God's name are you?" The world stopped. Bennett Pierce's face had gone from frantic to a pale, clammy grey. Arthur Conrad just looked confused, his bluff suspended. Pierre, the maitre d', was already in motion, his face a mask of professional fury, marching toward Chloe. "Mademoiselle, you are finished! Out!" Pierre hissed, grabbing for her arm. "Stop!" The word was not Russian. It was not English. It was a force. Nikolai Volkov hadn't raised his voice, but the command slammed into Pierre like a physical blow. The maitre d' froze, his hand hovering. Chloe was still on the floor, kneeling in a puddle of wine and ruined contracts, staring up at the most powerful man she had ever seen. He was studying her, not like a man looks at a woman, but like a scientist looks at an anomaly. "You speak the language of Pushkin," he said in Russian, his voice low. It wasn't a question. "And you, the language of Lermontov," Chloe replied, her voice shaking only slightly. She used the formal "you," her brain automatically sorting the correct grammar. The line. It's from The Demon. A flicker. Not a smile, but something more complex. Recognition. "Get up," he commanded. Chloe stood slowly, her hands stained with red wine, her cheap apron soaked. She was a complete and utter mess in a room designed to obliterate imperfections. "Mr. Volkov," Bennett Pierce interjected, finally finding his voice. He switched to a clumsy textbook Russian, the kind Chloe could tell he learned from a software program. "Please, izvinit. She is... Niet. Important. A mistake." He waved his hand to dismiss her. "Not important." Nikolai's eyes snapped to Bennett. The coldness in his gaze intensified to a level that made Chloe feel physically cold. He said one word to Bennett in Russian, so fast and so laced with contempt that Chloe almost missed it. "Zamknis." "Shut up." Bennett's mouth clicked shut. Nikolai Volkov turned his full attention back to Chloe. He gestured, not to the mess, but to the empty chair at his table, the one meant for a board member who was probably still stuck in security. "Sit," he said in Russian. Chloe's heart did a painful drum solo against her ribs. "Sir, I cannot. I am working." "You are not," he stated. He looked at Pierre. "She is with me. Bring her." "What you are drinking, Miss Larson," Chloe whispered. "Chloe Larson. Bring Miss Larson a new chair, a towel, and a glass of Dom Perignon." Pierre, a man who answered to no one, simply nodded. "Yes, Mr. Volkov." Within seconds, Chloe was seated. A waiter had replaced the soiled linens. Another had discreetly taken her wine-stained hands, wiped them, and placed a fresh napkin on her lap. A third placed a champagne flute in front of her. She was in her $15 black and white uniform, at a table of men wearing a collective $500,000 in watches. "Now," Nikolai said, ignoring the baffled-looking Arthur Conrad and the terrified Bennett Pierce. "The meeting will continue, but I am tired." He waved a hand at Bennett. "He bores me." He looked at Chloe. "You will translate. Sir, you will be my voice from this moment." Arthur Conrad cleared his throat. "Look here, Volkov. This is absurd. We are in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar negotiation. I am not speaking through a waitress." "No offense, honey." Chloe bristled. Nikolai Volkov held up a single finger. "Mr. Conrad," Nikolai began, speaking in his deep, rhythmic Russian. "You are a thief and a liar. You spilled that wine deliberately to disrupt this meeting because your funding is collapsing. You thought you could come here, rattle my handler." He said the word with infinite scorn, gesturing to Bennett, "and buy yourself another week." He paused, looked at Chloe. "Translate." "Exactly." Chloe's blood turned to adrenaline. This was it. The moment. She could soften it. She could play the invisible girl, or she could be the fire. She turned to Arthur Conrad, her back straight, her voice clear and precise. "Mr. Volkov says you are a thief and a liar. He says you spilled the wine on purpose to disrupt this meeting because your funding is collapsing. He says you came here to rattle Mr. Pierce and buy yourself time." Arthur Conrad's face went purple. "How dare you? How dare he? Bennett, control your animal." Bennett looked at Nikolai, pleading. "Sir, please. She is too literal." "What you meant to say was—" "What I meant to say," Nikolai interrupted, his voice a low growl, "is that your offer is an insult, your company is a shell, and I am giving you 30 seconds to get out of my restaurant before I call my friends at the SEC and ask them to look very closely at your third quarter reports." He looked at Chloe, word for word. Chloe took a deep breath. She translated, her voice ringing with the same cold authority as his, the exact cadence, the exact threat. Arthur Conrad stared, mouth open. He looked at Nikolai, who was calmly inspecting his fingernails. He looked at Chloe, who was meeting his gaze without flinching. He grabbed his briefcase. This is not over, Volkov." "It is," Chloe said, without waiting for the translation. Conrad stormed out, leaving a trail of furious silence. The table was quiet for a long moment. Bennett Pierce was staring at his plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. Garrett Shaw, the security man by the door, was actually smiling? No, just a quirk of his lip. Nikolai Volkov turned to Chloe. "Miss Larson," he said in Russian, "you have a very precise tongue. It is a rare quality." "I was a PhD candidate, sir. Precision is the job." "It was," he corrected. He picked up his champagne flute. "The restaurant, how much do they pay you?" $16 an hour, plus tips." He made a sound of disgust. "They are robbing you." He took a sip. "My car will be waiting for you when your shift, which is over, is done. Garrett will see you to it. We have much to discuss." "Discuss?" "Sir, I think I just lost my job." Nikolai Volkov gave the first expression she'd seen that remotely resembled a smile. It was cold, sharp, and utterly terrifying. "You did not lose a job, Miss Larson," he said. "You just got a promotion." Chloe's shift, which was indeed over, ended in a daze. Pierre, the maître d', didn't fire her. He looked at her with a strange, terrified respect, handed her her coat, and simply said, "Bonne chance, mademoiselle." Good luck. She would need it. She didn't get to go home to her tiny fifth-floor walk-up in Queens. As promised, Garrett Shaw, the block of granite, was waiting by the service entrance. He didn't speak, just opened the rear door of a black Maybach, so armored it looked like a small, luxurious tank. The ride was silent. Chloe watched the city blur past, her mind racing. PhD candidate, waitress, personal translator to a silent billionaire. It sounded like a fevered dream. They didn't drive to an office. They drove to the Aura, the needle-thin skyscraper on Billionaire's Row that had famously required its own power grid. The car descended into a silent, white marble private garage. A private elevator, all brushed steel and glass, opened directly into the penthouse. The doors slid open, and Chloe forgot to breathe. The apartment, a ridiculous word for a space that could house a football field, was a 3-story cage of glass, steel, and shadow. It overlooked Central Park, so high up that the entire city looked like a circuit board. The furniture was minimal, severe, and looked impossibly expensive. It was the most beautiful and the coldest place Chloe had ever seen. And there, in the center, standing before a 20-foot-tall window, was Nikolai Volkov. He had changed from his suit into a simple, severe black cashmere sweater and dark trousers. He held a glass of dark liquid. He looked less like a Tundra and more like a man. A very tired, very dangerous man. "Come in, Miss Larson," he said, his voice, still Russian, echoing in the vast space. "Drink?" "No, thank you." She was too nervous to even swallow. He turned to face her. "You are wondering why you are here." "I have a good idea," Chloe said, finding her footing. "But I'd like to hear it from you." "Sir, do not call me sir. It is servile. You are not my servant." "What am I?" He gestured to a chair. She sat. He remained standing, looming. "You are an anomaly. I have spent 10 years in this country. I have built an empire. I have done so in silence. Do you know why? The papers say you're traditional, that you find English distasteful." He laughed, a short, bark-like sound that held no humor. The papers are written by children. No, I am silent because this," he waved a hand at the city below, "is a nation of noise. Everyone talks. No one listens. And those who do listen," his eyes hardened, are usually trying to steal from you. He walked over to a high-tech console. Bennett Pierce, my executive officer, graduated top of his class, speaks 4 languages, and he is a fool. He seemed to be trying his best. He was trying to manage me, Volkov spat, to soften me. He translates my no into perhaps. He translates my this is garbage into a promising but flawed first draft. He translates fire him into let's find him a new position. He is a coward. And in my world, cowards are more dangerous than enemies. They create misunderstandings. He looked at her, his gaze pinning her to the chair. You, on the other hand, you are a scalpel. You cut right to the bone. He says you are a thief and a liar. You said it to his face. You are not afraid. I was terrified, Chloe admitted, her voice small. But you did it anyway. He smiled, that cold, rare smile. That is not fear, Miss Larson. That is courage, or perhaps desperation. A little of both. He nodded. Desperation? I know it well. I read your file. Chloe stiffened. My file? Of course, he said, as if it were obvious. The moment you sat down. Garrett had your full history before the champagne arrived. Chloe Annalise Larson, age 28, PhD candidate, Slavic Linguistics, Columbia. Dropped out 6 months ago. Reason? Family medical crisis. Father, John Larson. Pulmonary fibrosis, uninsured. Medical debt, $412,000. Current employment, Lucille, $16 an hour. Current residence, 34 to 12. 18th Avenue, Queens. Rent, $1,900. You are 3 weeks late. Chloe felt sick. He had undressed her life in less than an hour. She was exposed. You had no right. I have every right, he said, his voice flat. I am about to offer you a job, and I do not hire people I cannot understand. Your life, it explains your desperation. It explains your fluency. He walked to the window. I am surrounded by Bennetts, men who lie to me, who manage me, who steal from me under the guise of protecting me from myself. I am a prisoner of their translations. They use my silence as a weapon against me. He turned back. I want to hire you. As your translator. No, as my voice. You will be by my side. Every meeting, every call, every dinner. You will hear what I say, and you will say it. Exactly. No filter, no softening, no management. You will be the fire I use to scare the vultures. It was an insane proposal. It was a life raft. And in return? Chloe asked, her voice trembling. Your father's debt, he said, tapping a screen on his console. It is paid, as of 5 minutes ago. Chloe gasped, surging to her feet. What? You can't. I can, it is done. I can't accept that. It is not a gift. It is a retainer, an advance. He named a number, an annual salary that made Chloe's head spin, a number with 6 zeros before the decimal. Plus, he added, housing. You will live here, in the aura, a car, a wardrobe. You are no longer a waitress, Miss Larson. You are me. My words. My will. The implications slammed into her. This wasn't a job. It was an acquisition. He was buying her voice, her life. 24/7. She would be as much a prisoner in this glass cage as he was. She thought of her father, of the constant, choking fear of the bills. She thought of the humiliation of Lucille. She thought of the PhD she'd never finish. And then she looked at this powerful, broken, silent man. He was a monster, yes. But he was also the first person in a long time who had seen her as powerful, too. I have one condition, Chloe said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. He raised an eyebrow. You are in no position to negotiate. I'm not negotiating. I'm clarifying the terms. She walked toward him, stopping just short of his personal space. I am not you. I am not your will. I am your employee. I am a linguist. I will translate your words, and I will translate the words of others to you. I will be your auditor, your analyst, but I am not your puppet, and I am not your property. She took a deep breath. And you will never pay a bill in my name again without asking me first. I will pay you back for my father's debt. Every cent. Nikolai Volkov stared at her for a long, heavy minute. The silence stretched. Chloe refused to look away. Finally, he nodded. A slow, respectful gesture. I misjudged, he said in Russian. You are not a scalpel. You are a blade of forged steel. Very well, Miss Larson. We will have it your way. You are my employee. He held out his hand. We start tomorrow, 6 a.m. We are flying to London. Be ready. Chloe met his hand. His grip was firm, his skin cold. One more thing, she said. Yes? What is your problem with Bennett Pierce? Nikolai's gaze darkened. Mr. Pierce, he said, is currently in charge of Project Krov, my passion project, a new filtration technology to bring clean water to areas in need. Chloe was surprised. That sounds humanitarian. It is, Nikolai said, and Arthur Conrad, the man you insulted tonight, wants it. He wants to buy it, bury it, and continue selling his company's outdated, overpriced systems. And I have a deep, growing suspicion that Mr. Pierce is helping him. He let go of her hand. That is what you will help me find out, Miss Larson. You are not just my voice. You are my ears. Chloe's old life was deleted in a single night. A car, driven by the silent Garrett Shaw, took her to her Queen's apartment at 3 a.m. She was given 10 minutes. She packed a single bag with her father's photo, her favorite textbook on Slavic syntax, and 3 changes of clothes. Everything else, Garrett informed her, would be handled. By 4 a.m., she was in a sterile, beautiful guest suite in the Aura penthouse. By 6 a.m., she was on a private Gulfstream G650, sitting across from Nikolai Volkov on a cream-colored leather chair, sipping coffee that cost more than her daily wage. The new wardrobe was already there. Tom Ford, The Row, Armani. Armor, all in shades of black, grey and navy. The uniform of a shadow. Her new life was a blur of steel-grey boardrooms and time zones. London, Zurich, Tokyo. She sat by Nikolai's side, a silent, perfectly dressed accessory, until he spoke. And when he spoke, she translated. London. A hostile bank meeting. Nikolai, in Russian. Your algorithm is flawed. Your projections are fantasy, and you have 24 hours to return my capital, or I will burn your bank to the ground and salt the earth. Chloe, in English. Mr. Volkov states that your algorithm is flawed, and your projections are fantasy. He requests a return of his capital within 24 hours, or he will pursue all available legal and financial remedies. She had, for the first few days, tried to be a translator, to soften the edges. He had stopped her. Do not, he'd said, be Bennett. Be the fire. So she was. Zurich, a tech acquisition. Nikolai, in Russian. Your patent is elegant, but you are running out of money. I will not pay your absurd asking price. I will give you half, but I will also give you my laboratories and my engineers. You will be rich, or you will be bankrupt. Choose. Chloe, in V English. Mr. Volkov finds your patent elegant, but he is aware of your financial runway. He is offering 50% of your asking price, in addition to full access to Volkov Global's R&D division. It is his final offer. She was good at it. Her linguistic training had prepared her for this. She didn't just translate words, she translated intent, the pauses, the subtext, the subtle shift in honorifics. But the real test was Project Krov. They returned to New York, to the 100th floor headquarters of Volkov Global. This was Bennett Pierce's domain, and he was not happy. Chloe's presence at Nikolai's side was a declaration of war. She, the waitress, had supplanted him. He was still the executive, but he was no longer the voice. "Mr. Volkov," Bennett said, greeting them outside the boardroom. "A productive trip, I trust? Miss Larson." He said her name like it was something he'd scraped off his shoe. Nikolai just brushed past him and entered the room, Chloe at his heel. The meeting was about Project Krov, the water filtration project. Bennett was presenting. His slides were beautiful. His projections were glossy. "As you can see," Bennett said smoothly, "we've hit a regulatory snag. The EPA is asking for more tests. It's problematic. It could delay the rollout by a year, maybe 2. Nikolai, as usual, was silent. He just stared at the screen. "This, of course, impacts the investors," Bennett continued. "A delay of this magnitude, they're getting nervous. Arthur Conrad's hostile bid. It's starting to look more attractive to them." Nikolai tapped his pen. Tink, tink, tink. "Sir," Bennett said, "I think we need to consider a sale. We can offload Krov, cut our losses, and focus on the assets that are actually making money." Nikolai stopped tapping. He turned to Chloe. "Sprosi jego," he said in Russian. "Ask him." "Sprosi jego, kakoi vkus u predatelstva." Chloe's blood ran cold. Ask him what betrayal tastes like. She couldn't. Not that. It was too much. It was an accusation. She looked at Nikolai. He was challenging her. Be the fire. Chloe turned to Bennett. "Mr. Volkov has a question. He wants to know what betrayal tastes like." The color drained from Bennett's face. I beg your pardon. What an insane... He's asking about the EPA," Chloe pressed, the pieces clicking into place. "He says the EPA doesn't request delays like this. They issue findings. He wants to see the finding, the physical letter." Bennett stammered. It's all digital. Red tape. I'll have my assistant fetch it." "Fetch it now," Chloe said, her voice like ice. Bennett scrambled out of the room. Nikolai looked at Chloe. "You hesitated. It was an accusation. It was the truth," he said. "How do you know?" "Because," Nikolai said, pointing to the presentation. "That data, slide 34, the flow rate metrics, they are wrong. They are the old metrics, the ones from 6 months ago, before my new prototype." Chloe's eyes widened. "He's using old data to justify the sale." "He is not just using old data," Nikolai said, his voice terrible. "He is lying. He is sabotaging my company. He is giving Krov to Conrad." "But why? He's your top executive." Nikolai stood and walked to the vast window. He gestured to the city. "This is a city of hunger. Bennett is hungry. I paid him millions, but he wanted power. He wanted to be me. And he knew that as long as I was silent, he was close enough." "But I am here," Chloe said. "I'm your voice. I'm in his way." "You are not in his way, Chloe," Nikolai said, turning to her. "You are his excuse. He will tell the board that you are the problem, that this unstable, unqualified waitress has poisoned me, that I am compromised. He will use you to prove I am unfit." Chloe felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What do we do? We let him. We let him? Yes. We let him think he is winning. We give him the rope. Nikolai's eyes were dark. He has an ally. This is not just him. This is deeper. "How do you know?" "The painting," he said. "The what?" "The painting in your study?" Chloe was confused. She'd seen it. A dark, brutalist Russian painting. No, Nikolai said. The other painting, the one that used to hang in my office, a small landscape by Repin. It was a gift from my father. What about it? It is gone. Maybe it's being cleaned. It is gone, Nikolai repeated. And the only other person with a key to my private office, besides me, you, and Garrett, is my cousin, Dmitri Petrov. Dmitri Petrov. The name hung in the air like poison. I've seen him, Chloe said, thinking back. Tall? Dark hair? He runs the European division? He runs my family's trust, Nikolai said bitterly. I brought him here from St. Petersburg. I gave him everything, a seat at the table, a life he could never have dreamed of. I thought blood would be thicker than water. But Project Krov, it is water, Chloe said softly. Nikolai's gaze snapped to hers, a brief flash of appreciation in his eyes. Yes, it is. Dmitri and Bennett, Chloe pieced it together. They're working together. And Conrad, Nikolai added. Bennett is the inside man, the legitimate face. Dmitri is the blood. He's the one who can access my private holdings, the painting, the trust. He's the one who can authorize the final sale. They're planning a hostile takeover, Chloe breathed. Project Krov isn't the target. It's the catalyst. They'll use its failure to trigger a key man clause. They'll argue you're unstable. And that your sudden ascension, he said, gesturing to her, is proof of my mental decline. The sheer diabolical brilliance of it was terrifying. They were using Nikolai's own legend against him, the silent, eccentric brute. Of course, he'd be the kind of man to be manipulated by a pretty young translator. It was the perfect narrative. So, Chloe said, her mind racing, we can't just fire them. We have no proof. It's just a missing painting and a bad presentation. Proof, Nikolai said, can be acquired. This was new. Chloe was a linguist, a translator. She analyzed text. She was not a spy. What do you have in mind? She asked, her mouth dry. Dmitri has a weakness, Nikolai said, walking to his desk. He is sentimental, and he is greedy. Bennett is just a snake, but Dmitri is a magpie. He likes shiny things. He opened a drawer and removed a small, simple USB drive. It looked like 1,000 others. This, he said, is a Trojan, a gift. What's on it? On the outside, the real Project Krov data, the new prototypes, the successful test results, the financials that prove it will be more profitable than anything Volkov Global has ever produced. You're just giving it to them? I am giving it to Dmitri, Nikolai corrected, and on the inside, it contains a tracker, a keylogger, and a microphone. Chloe stared at the drive. That is highly illegal. So is corporate espionage, Nikolai countered. He will not be able to resist. He will see this. He will see the trillions Krov is worth, and he will want to cut Bennett out. He will want it all for himself and Conrad. He'll betray his co-conspirator. Vultures, Nikolai said, always turn on each other when the carcass is large enough. How do we get it to him? We don't, Nikolai said. You do. Me? He'll never trust me. He hates me. He looks at me like I'm trash. Exactly, Nikolai said. He sees you as what did Conrad call you? A waitress, a honey, an unimportant, star-struck girl. He will not suspect you. You will, accidentally, drop it. The plan was terrifyingly simple. The next day, there was a full executive meeting. Chloe walked in, as always, by Nikolai's side. She carried her tablet, a leather-bound notebook, and a bottle of water. Dmitri Petrov was there, smiling, all European charm. He was handsome, in a slick, predatory way. He stood to kiss Chloe's hand. Ah, Chloe, he said, his English perfect, unlike his clumsy Russian counterpart. You are looking radiant. "This life agrees with you, no?" "Mr. Petrov," she said, her voice cool. She walked past him, toward her seat, and as she did, she let the USB drive, which she'd palmed, tumble from her notebook. It skittered across the marble floor. "Oh," she said, a mask of flustered embarrassment. How clumsy. She bent to get it, but Dmitri was faster. He swooped down, a gentleman, and picked it up. "What have we here?" he said, his smile never wavering. "Oh, just Mr. Volkov's files. The Krov data." "He's so messy," she said, playing the part of the ditzy assistant. "Thank you." She reached for it, but he didn't give it back. He held it, inspecting the simple silver casing. "Krov," he said. "So much drama over a little water." He tucked it into his breast pocket. "I will give it to him. You prepare for the meeting." Chloe's heart was hammering. "Thank you. You're a lifesaver." She took her seat. She looked at Nikolai, who was staring out the window, as if he hadn't seen a thing. The hook was in. For the next 48 hours they watched, or rather, Chloe watched a special, encrypted portal that Garrett Shaw, who was now officially in on it, and looked almost happy about the prospect of wet work, had set up. The keylogger was a gold mine. Dmitri had immediately plugged it into his personal laptop. He had opened the files. Chloe watched in real time as he typed. "Email to classified contact a Conrad. The fool's girl dropped it. The real data. This is bigger than we thought. Krov isn't a failure. It's a gold mine." Reply: "What does this mean for our plan?" Dmitri's reply: "It means Bennett is a short-sighted idiot. He wanted to sell for scrap. We are going to take the whole thing. The vote at the estate is still on. We'll declare Nikolai unfit, as planned. We install Bennett as the puppet CEO. But you and I, we take Krov. We spin it off. We bury Bennett later." The tracker showed Dmitri meeting Bennett at a private club. But the microphone, that was the real prize. They activated it. Chloe and Nikolai sat in the dark of his penthouse study, the massive, cold speakers playing the sounds of betrayal. Bennett's voice, high-pitched, nervous. "I don't like this, Dmitri. We had a deal. We sell it to Conrad. We split the profit." "Simple." Dmitri's voice, smooth, laughing. "Simple? You are a simple man, Bennett. You think too small. Why take $1 million when we can take $1 billion? Bennett: "What about the girl? She's always watching." Dmitri: "The girl? The waitress? Do not worry about her. She's a temporary distraction. Once we vote Nikolai out, she will be handled. A girl like that. Accidents happen, especially to pretty little waitresses who get in over their heads." Chloe felt a physical jolt. Accidents happen? Beside her, in the dark, Nikolai Volkov's hand clenched into a fist so tight she heard his knuckles crack. "The final vote," Nikolai said, his voice a low growl. "It is in 2 days, at the Southampton estate." "They're going to try to kill me," Chloe whispered, her voice shaking. "No," Nikolai said. He stood up, the light from the city illuminating him from behind, making him a terrifying silhouette. "They are not." He turned on the light. His face was not angry. It was calm. It was the calm of a Siberian winter, just before the storm hits. "They have called a war, Miss Larson. They want a show. They want to see the beast, the silent tundra, at bay." He looked at her, and his eyes were different. Not cold. They were burning. "We will give them a show," he said. "We will give them a tragedy. And you will be the star." The Southampton estate was Nikolai's winter palace. It was a fortress of glass and grey stone, set against the bleak, churning backdrop of the November Atlantic. It was beautiful, isolating, and built for war. The board members arrived by helicopter, one by one. They were the old guard, The money, the power. They were all men who had known Nikolai for years, who respected his results but feared his methods. And they were all, clearly, deeply concerned. Bennett and Dmitri had done their work well. The rumors had been circulating for weeks. Volkov was unstable. He was erratic. He'd been captured by a young, manipulative woman. He was a danger to the company. Chloe was, once again, invisible. But this time, it was by design. When the board members assembled in the Great Room, a cavernous space with a 30-foot fireplace, Chloe was not at Nikolai's side. She was wearing a simple black and white uniform, identical to the one she'd worn at Le Ciel. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She was, by all appearances, a member of the catering staff. "Water, Mr. Pierce?" she asked, her voice bland. Bennett Pierce, standing at the head of the massive oak table, looked at her, a smirk of triumph on his face. He didn't even recognize the uniform as a mockery. He just saw his victory. "Thank you, dear," he said, patting her hand. "You see, everyone finds their proper place, eventually." Dmitri Petrov, standing by the fireplace, raised his glass to her in a silent toast. The waitress. Nikolai Volkov sat at the head of the table, silent, a statue. He looked defeated. He hadn't spoken, not even in Russian, since they arrived. He just stared at his hands. "Gentlemen," Bennett began, his voice ringing with false sincerity, "we are here today for a deeply painful reason." He launched into his speech. It was a masterpiece of corporate backstabbing. "We all respect Nikolai," he said. "We've all profited from his singular vision. He painted a picture of a brilliant mind, now in decline. He talked about erratic behavior, obsession with the failed Project Krov, and undue influence." As he said that, he gestured to Chloe, who was quietly refilling water glasses. "A man in his position, he is vulnerable. I have tried to protect him, but I can no longer." Dmitri stepped forward. "It is true. My cousin, he is not the man he was. He is unwell. For the good of the company, for the good of his own legacy, we must intervene." They presented the evidence, the failing, falsified data on Project Krov, the regulatory nightmare which Bennett had created. "And so," Bennett concluded, "with the heaviest of hearts, we must invoke Article 7 of the company bylaws, the key man clause. We are calling for a vote of no confidence in Nikolai Volkov as CEO. We propose an interim CEO, myself, until a new, stable leadership can be found." The room was silent. The board members looked grim. They looked at Bennett. They looked at Dmitri. And they looked at the broken, silent man at the head of the table. "Nikolai," one of the older board members, a man named Howard, asked gently, "do you have anything to say to this?" Nikolai Volkov did not move. He did not look up. Chloe, standing by the serving station, pressed a small, hidden button on her belt. He cannot even speak for himself," Bennett said, his voice dripping with pity. "The man is gone." "That's not true." The voice was Chloe's, clear, loud, and terrified. Every head in the room snapped to her. "What?" Bennett barked. "Security! Get her out of here!" "She's right." This voice was not Chloe's. It was deep, resonant, and it was speaking in perfect, unaccented, boardroom English. Nikolai Volkov slowly lifted his head. The defeated look was gone. His eyes were not dull. They were shining. He stood up. "She's right," he repeated. "I am not gone." The silence that followed was not quiet. It was explosive. Jaws dropped. Bennett Pierce went so white he looked like a corpse. Dmitri Petrov's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the stone floor. "Nikolai," Howard, the board member, gasped. You're speaking English?" "Yes," Nikolai said, his voice a smooth, cold river of sound. "I've been speaking it since I was 6. Oxford, you know. Class of 98. He looked around the room, his gaze landing on each board member, one by one. "For 10 years, he said, I have used silence as a shield, as a test. I wanted to see what men do when they think the wolf is sleeping. I wanted to see who would listen to the words, and who would just manage the beast." His gaze locked onto Bennett. "I did not, however, account for jackals." This is a trick," Bennett sputtered. She did this. She's a witch, a waitress?" Nikolai finished for him. "Yes, she was. She was also the only person in a decade who was not afraid of me, and who was too smart to be fooled by you." He gestured to Chloe. "Miss Larson, if you would." Chloe stepped forward, her uniform suddenly looking like a disguise. She placed her serving tray on the table. But it wasn't a tray. It was a high-resolution tablet. "Gentlemen," Chloe said, her voice now the one of command, "Mr. Pierce and Mr. Petrov have painted a picture of a failing project. I'd like to show you the real picture." She tapped the screen. It linked to the 80-inch monitor on the wall, and the audio began. Dmitri's voice, smooth, laughing. "Why take 1 million when we can take 1 billion? Bennett's voice, high-pitched, nervous. "What about the girl? She's always watching." Dmitri's voice, "Do not worry about her. Accidents happen." The room was frozen. Bennett Pierce was visibly shaking, trying to find an exit. Dmitri was stock still, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. That's deep fake," Bennett shrieked. "It's a lie." "Is it?" Chloe said, tapping the screen again. The audio was replaced by emails, bank transfers, shell corporations, the entire sordid trail leading from Bennett to Dmitri to Arthur Conrad. "The regulatory snag at the EPA," Chloe said, "was an anonymous tip about faulty materials, filed by a shell company owned by Mr. Pierce. The old data," she continued, "was a deliberate substitution to devalue the asset before Mr. Petrov sold the patent, my patent, to our chief competitor." Nikolai walked, slowly, around the table until he was standing behind his cousin. "The painting," Nikolai said, his voice soft. "The Repin. Where is it, Dmitri? Did you lose it?" Dmitri didn't answer. "It's over, Bennett," Nikolai said, moving to stand in front of him. "You wanted to manage me. You wanted to be me." He leaned in close. "You are not fit to breathe my air." "Security!" Bennett screamed, backing away. "Oh, they're here," Nikolai said. The doors to the great room burst open, but it wasn't the estate's private security. It was Garrett Shaw, and 2 men in dark suits who were unmistakably federal agents. "Bennett Pierce, Dmitri Petrov," one of the agents said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and, well, we'll have a long time to discuss the list." As they were cuffed, Bennett, in a last-ditch effort, lunged, not at Nikolai, but at Chloe. You bitch." He never made it. Nikolai, the silent, broken man, moved faster than Chloe had ever seen. He didn't hit Bennett. He simply caught him by the throat. He lifted the smaller man slightly off the ground, his voice a terrifying whisper that only Chloe and Bennett could hear. "You speak of accidents," Nikolai hissed in Russian. "If you ever breathe her name again, I will show you a real one." He dropped Bennett at the agent's feet. The room was silent as they were dragged away. Nikolai Volkov stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily. He looked at the stunned board. "Gentlemen," he said, straightening his tie, his English crisp again. "My apologies for the theatricality. Now, about Project Krov. I believe we have a new launch timeline to discuss." The aftermath was quiet. The board, in a unanimous and deeply terrified vote, not only reaffirmed Nikolai as CEO, but also granted him unprecedented control over the company. Project Krov was fast-tracked. The stock, after the initial shock, soared. The silent Tundra could speak. He was no longer an enigma. He was a god. But for Chloe, the victory felt final. She was in her suite at the Aura penthouse. Her bags were packed, the real ones this time. Her old, worn-out suitcase from Queens. Her job was done. Her father was healthy. The bills were paid. Her own bank account held a number so large it seemed fictional. Nikolai had been generous. The bonus for auditing services rendered was enough for her to buy her own building in Queens. She was free. She looked out the vast glass window. The city lights sparkled below, no longer a circuit board, but just a city, a place where she could go, be anyone. She could go back to Columbia. She could finish her PhD. She could live. But as she looked at her reflection in the glass, she felt empty. She had been his voice, his fire, his partner in the winter's tale. Now he had his own voice. He didn't need a translator. He didn't need her. She was picking up her bag to leave, to just disappear, like the invisible waitress she used to be, when he walked in. He wasn't wearing the armor of a suit or the casual millionaire cashmere. He was in a simple, grey t-shirt and dark jeans. He looked young, almost human. "You are leaving," he stated. He was speaking English. "My job is done," Chloe said, her voice tight. She refused to look at him. "You don't need a translator anymore, Mr. Volkov." "No," he agreed. "I don't." The silence stretched. It was different from his old silences. Not a weapon. Just an emptiness. "I have spoken English since I was 6, he said, walking to stand beside her, looking out the window. "I went to Oxford. The mute Russian. It was a lie, a test." "I know," Chloe said. "It started," he continued as if she hadn't spoken, "when my father died. The vultures, they did descend. They thought I was a child, weak. They thought they could manage me. So I became the muzik, the brute, the silent, unpredictable Russian. And it worked. They were terrified of me. It became a weapon, my most powerful one." He looked at her, his winter storm eyes reflecting the city lights. "The problem is that when you wear a mask for 10 years, you forget how to take it off. I was so busy testing everyone else, I forgot how to trust. I became the monster in the painting. I was a prisoner." "You're free now," Chloe said, finally turning to face him. "Am I?" he asked. "I can speak, but I find I have nothing to say. Not in this cold language." He gestured at the city. "English. It is the language of contracts, of war, of transactions." He switched to Russian. The shift was immediate. The language was warmer, richer, rolling off his tongue. "Это не язык для души." It is not a language for the soul. You were the only one, he said, still in Russian, who understood both. The only one who didn't try to handle me, or fix me, or manage me. You just listened. You gave me my own words back. Chloe's heart ached. "Nikolai." "You were my voice, Chloe Larson," he said, taking a step closer. "And now I am silent again. But this silence is worse, because it is empty." She looked at him. The billionaire, the Tundra, the brute. and she saw for the first time just a man who was profoundly, terrifyingly lonely. "So what do you want to say, Nikolai?" she asked, her voice soft, also in Russian. He took a breath. He looked nervous. The man who faced down traitors and broke markets was nervous. "I want to say, spasibo. Thank you." "You're welcome," she whispered. "And I want to say..." He reached out, not to grab her, but his hand hovered in the air between them. "Ostancia. Stay." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. I can't. I'm not your translator." "No," he said, his voice urgent. "Not as my translator. Not as my employee." He took her hand. His skin was not cold. It was warm. "Stay. As my partner." "I don't know how to be a partner to a billionaire," she said, a small, sad laugh escaping her. "And I," he said, giving her that rare, true smile, the one that reached his eyes, "do not know how to be a partner to anyone. It is a new language for both of us." He held her hand tighter. "You can teach me," he said, "and I will teach you how to paint." Chloe looked at their joined hands. She looked at the city waiting below, and she looked at him. She was no longer the invisible girl, and he was no longer the silent monster. "Okay," Chloe Larson said, in English. "Show me where to start." And that is how a waitress changed everything. She didn't just expose a betrayal, she liberated a man from his own prison of silence. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many people are we missing just because we don't speak their language? The biggest conspiracies aren't always in boardrooms. Sometimes they're in the silence between two people. What did you think of Nikolai's takedown? Were you expecting him to speak English? This story took a long time to tell, and if you enjoyed the drama and the twists, please let me know. Your support is what keeps this channel going. Do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm. If you have a friend who loves a story about betrayal and justice, share this video with them. And most importantly, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for listening.